Kia ora! Kia ora! How are we doing? I'm pregnant, I waddle, it's a thing, okay? Heuri tēnei no Ngāti Whanaunga, Ngāti Manaia, Ngāti Pūkenga ki Manaia, ko Tainui, ko Mātātua, ko Moiho, ko Ti Kapakapa te Moana Enganguru. Nei, kia ora tātou, I am Natua. I am Natua Kaa-Morgan, and I am pregnant. I am healthy, I am wealthy, I am rich, I am not usually like this, with a huge human growing in my frontal region. However, my husband, James, haka ko wai te kaiwhakaora, him and I, we did something very fun, and then bam, this happened. Marriage, folks. Yes, I'm blessed. I am blessed. My friends, it is Saturday night tonight. Tonight is Saturday night. We are more than halfway through Easter camp. And we don't have a lot of time together, you and me and us and y'all. So we're going to get straight into it with one disclaimer. Because I'm pregnant, and we get it, we could go into labor tonight all together, all in. We will not, because we're waiting for July. However, we could have another little new function occur. It's recent, where sometimes when I get a fright or when I sneeze, my body releases other fluids. And so God of all of creation, we pray that you keep the sneezes in so we can enjoy as much time together tonight as possible. Am I right? Amen. Bye. Okay, so like I said, we're going to get straight into it. And we're going to do what we did last night, yesterday morning. We're going to plant our feet on the ground. We're going to straighten our backs. And we're going to slow it down. Slow it down. Bring it down. And breathe. Hold, 2, 3, out. Hold, 2, 3. Hold, 2, 3. I remember when I was 13, my bedroom was right next to my older sister's. She was 16 in high school, older, cooler, and I was extremely tall for my age, and my eyebrows were a lot thicker for my face size at that time. I thank God for growth of my face and for making hairy eyebrows a bit of a thing. I had natural curiosities about my sister. I'd look at her, you know, smiling and giggling, and I'd wonder, you got a boyfriend? Because I knew we weren't allowed boyfriends. I would never ask her out loud, but I'd just look at her, you know, you got a boyfriend? So one day, I was walking home from school and I went, you know what? Today's the day. I'm going to find out. I'm going to go and I'm going to see if she's got a boyfriend. And so when I got home, I casually walked into her bedroom and casually just touched a few things, and then suddenly I was in her bedside drawer because I knew that if she had a diary, she would hide it in there. And I was rummaging through the mess, and ooh, there it was, ooh, on my lap, ooh, open to the last page. I thought, look, I'll just read one page, just one entry, and I'll put it back. There's no harm done if I just read one, right? And so that afternoon, 13 years old, I knelt at the side of her bed and I read the words, "Dear Diary, I often think about taking my life, but then I think about Natua, and I could never do it. In that moment, 13-year-old Natua, I shut that diary, I shoved it back in her bedside drawer, and with hands trembling, I walked out of her room, and I never spoke of that moment again.
Dear Diary, I often think about taking my life, but then I think about Natua and I could never do it. What would she think of me? What if she didn't understand and got angry at me, hated me even? Why should she have to live in the shadow that I would leave behind? What would I leave behind? Shh. Just smile when you're smiled at. Laugh when you hear a joke, but shh. People would talk. They'd say, what did she have to be depressed about? They'd say I was spoiled and ungrateful. They'd all have their own conclusions about what I was going through. All eyes would be on me, and that feeling alone seemed worse than the silent struggle I was going through. So all I kept thinking was, shh. I needed to find another way to say it without actually saying it. Looking back 13 years ago, I thought it was easier to say nothing than to admit that I was depressed and have people tell me that what I was feeling wasn't real, that I was wrong. Admitting it felt like it would open myself up to questions that I didn't have the answers to. I didn't know why I felt like I did, but I did know that I felt it every day. And so at 16 years old, I decided it was better for me to be suffering alone than to become a burden to someone else. I chose loneliness. I chose secrecy. I chose fear, and I chose silence. And I never said a thing about what I was going through.
If I look back on my life, I spent a lot of that time in silence. Didn't really know who I was. We were told to be quiet, not to express our feelings, be seen and not heard. I was afraid to come forward and be noticed or be heard. I find it difficult to share those emotions, even with those whom I'm close to. I was really in a bit of a dark place. I had dark moments where you think things that you never thought you would think. That was quite challenging for me, but I internalised it all. I didn't think it was right for me to show my children and show my wife that I wasn't the strong person they really thought I was, so I kept that to myself. That's a bit of an injustice on my part because some things need to be spoken up about. Last year, after lockdown, it was time to share what I've been going through, and it was a really great time. It was like the lifting of a big weight off my shoulders. After I opened my mouth and shared, embarrassment at how I'd let myself keep all that stuff to myself, but the relief of having shared, lifting the burden of that silence, being able to speak and not remain silent was huge.
Wow. My sister and my dad, beautiful. 3 different people, 3 different experiences, one whānau. And can you guys see the common denominator in all of that? Is it as clear to you guys in hindsight as it is to me? 13-year-old Natua finds a diary where her older sister is literally admitting that she wants to commit suicide. And I shut my damn mouth. Why? Because I was so afraid that if I brought it up, I would get caught out because I was snooping around in business that wasn't mine. And so I chose silence for my own selfish gain. My 16-year-old sister, suffering under these thoughts every day, and the only person she tells is her diary, silence. Why? Because she was so afraid that if she was to tell someone what she was going through, she would be shamed or shunned or blamed or worse, judged. And so she chose silence out of fear. And then my dad, my beautiful dad, 63 years old, and he admits that his whole life he hasn't been able to express his feelings. Silence. He went through stress, fear, self-hatred because he was a Māori man, discouragement, disappointment, resentment. Just another Māori man suffering with depression in the sea of those who have been crushed by colonial darkness. All until last year, when he decided, in the thick of realizing that depression and suicide were on the cards, that he was going to fight and he was going to open his mouth. Serious question though, how many times, not just that one example, but how many times have we chosen silence in these moments that kind of hurt ourselves and hurt others around us? And I'm not just talking about our secrets, I'm not talking about our feelings, I'm not talking about the things we're ashamed of. I'm even talking about when we choose silence, when we see something happening, when we see someone being bullied, or lied to, or someone being left out. When we see one of our friends or one of our family members saying something racist, sexist, ableist, transphobic, homophobic, or even just general hate speech, and we choose silence. But it's not just me. It's not just my sister. It's not just my dad. It was also Judas. It was also Peter. And it was also Jesus. 3 different people, 3 different stories, one Easter narrative, Judas, the disciple that betrayed Jesus when Jesus needed his friends. He chose silence when he decided, you know what? I'm not going to tell the truth about Jesus to the Pharisees. Those Pharisees, they were out for blood. They were out to kill. They were out to murder. And Judas had the capacity to say something about Jesus that would steer their course in another direction. Yet he chose silence. Why? For selfish gain. Peter, the disciple that denied being friends with Jesus in his moment of need. You know, Jesus was on trial because he'd been caught. And all these people were coming to him going, hey, isn't he one of your bros? Aren't you with that Jesus guy? And Peter goes, nah, he's not. I don't know him. 3 times he does that. He chose silence by denying the truth. And why? Because he was afraid that the people would reject him. And finally, Jesus. Oof. Did you know the Bible says that through his whole crucifixion, through that whole thing, he was like a sheep, like a lamb suffering, yet he did not open his mouth. Silence. Through the torture, through being captured, through being put on trial, beaten, whipped, stripped, bloodied, bruised, hung, killed. He saw his friends denying him and saying they didn't know him. He saw the people, his own people, chanting, kill him, kill him, kill him, kill him, kill him. And he did not open his mouth. Silence. But in this part of the story, this, my friends, this is where we see a little turn of events. This is where the narrative goes somewhere else. This is where we see another whakaaro, another way, another thought, e hoa ma. Because Jesus, being God, right? He knew what he was going to go through before he went through it. And he knew what he was going through when he was going through it, and he knew what was going to happen after he went through it. And even though he knew all of this, all things about all of time and all of space, he knew that it had been prophesied that he would be silently slain in the thick of it, in the depth of the darkness, in the peak of his pain, when he was suffering on that cross, when he was dying and in need. You know what he did? He opened his damn mouth. Jesus opened his mouth when he yelled out to the Father, my God, why have you forsaken me? He was asking, why have you done this? Where are you when I need you most? In that moment on that cross, Jesus showed us his true need, yeah? He showed us his heart. He showed us what he was really feeling, what he really wanted in that moment. He showed us that when we're in those situations of darkness, of sadness, of depression, of feeling alone, of not knowing what's going on, of struggling, when we feel like the world is crushing us, when there's depth and darkness all around us, he showed us that one of the most courageous things you can do is open your mouth and say something. You can opt out of silence. Because if silence means selfishness, if it means hatred, if it means shame, if silence is causing you to shut the truth up, if it's causing you to shun people, if it's causing you to serve yourself and not save others, not help others, not see someone in need and do nothing about it, if silence is doing that, then silence is an injustice. It's an injustice. And if silence is an injustice, that must mean that opening our mouths is a courageous act of justice, ne? If silence is an injustice, it must mean that saying something is a courageous act of righteousness, ne? If silence is an injustice, it must mean that speaking up and using our voice is doing what's right. My whānau are going to come up. They're going to come and they're going to bring it, and my timing might be out, but we're going to go with it. They're going to join me because, as Blue was saying, we spent a little bit of time at Ihu Mātau, the land protection, Tainui Waka Tū Māori Mai. We spent some time there because we decided as a whānau we were going to go all in and not be silent in the face of a national injustice where the government had stolen land and were letting it be sold off, leaving Māori with nothing. Just one more time. That's right. So we decided we're going to be all in and we're going to open our mouths. And some kupu are going to come up on the screen, and this is a little chant we learned there. This chant, it reminds us that we have the power to fight for what's right if we just open our mouths against whatever it is you're facing, whether it's darkness or depression, whether you're seeing injustice happen around our nation. We have the capacity to speak. And so we're basically just going to sing it out. You're going to see the power of it. Because that injustice at Ihu Mātau, that injustice to Jesus, the injustice I did to my sister when I was 13, I don't have to choose that anymore. We don't have to choose that, e hoa mā. We get to choose either the injustice of silence or the justice of having the courage to open our mouths when everything's telling us to keep it a secret, yeah? Yeah. That's the power we have. So, who are you going to be tonight? You're going to be someone who leaves here still choosing silence? Or you're going to go, actually, I'm going to choose something else. I'm going to choose to open my mouth. Eh? E kore rawa, e mutu te whawhai atu ki te kāwanatanga e. We will never give up our rights to fight for what's right. Oh no, we will not. E kore rawa, e mutu te whawhai atu ki te kāwanatanga e. We will never give up our rights to fight for what's right. Oh no, we will not. E kore rawa, e mutu te whawhai atu ki te kāwanatanga e.